Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is the New Teen Titans Volume 7 DC Comics trade paperback collection. And today we are going to start the Judas Contract. So in this case, it's going to be the Judas Contract, Book 1, The Eyes of Tara Markov. And at this point in time, just as a sort of a weird side note, they had changed the name of the book from the New Teen Titans to the Tales of the Teen Titans. Really confusing. Not sure why they did that, but DC did that, so it is what it is. Really cool cover, by the way. Does great foreshadowing for what's actually going to come right here. I like the red on black. There's the eyes, the menacing eyes of Tara, and then showcasing all of the different shots here of what's going to occur inside this issue. So this is technically issue 42 because the Tales of the Teen Titans is considered sort of a weird continuation of the New Teen Titans, so the numbers still kind of work out even though they changed the title. I don't understand what the heck DC was doing during this time, but whatever. Anyhow, this is again written by Marv Wolfman, drawn by George Perez, in this case Dick Giordano on the inks. Interestingly enough, around this time, and again, this is both the strength and the weakness of DC Comics during the 80s. During the 80s, a lot of, quote-unquote refugees from the shooter regime at Marvel moved over to DC Comics, mainly because Jim Shooter would not allow writers to be their own editors. So what you'll see right here is, editors. Here you have Marv and George, right? So in this case, Marv Wolfman and George Perez were their own editors on this book, which is very interesting. And in this case, because there's at least two of them, I think it kind of works out. In other areas where Marv Wolfman kind of self-edits himself, it doesn't work out nearly as well, at least in my opinion. I think that's one of the big weaknesses of Marv Wolfman versus, let's say, Claremont of this decade, was I think Wolfman really needed an editor, in my opinion, because he did kind of go a little bit off the reservation a lot of times in his writing. And the same way Claremont would go off the reservation on his writing too without an editor. But in this case, this particular run here, the Judas Contract, this worked out perfectly. This, what is it? It's about 4 issues in an annual. It is one of the best comic book stories of the 1980s. Some would argue, especially for DC fans, the best, I would say, internalized story within a book, excluding Crisis on Infinite Earths, which for most DC fans of the 80s is the big one of this time. Anyhow, I've kind of babbled on enough. Let's get into this. We open up this page and we get a great pinup of Starfire. George Perez was very good at doing this. He did a lot of Starfire pinups of this era. Basically, honestly, the best and the original Starfire artist. And we get over here, and this is Donna doing a photo shoot. So again, for those of you who remember, Donna Troy Wonder Girl works as a photographer, and she's kind of sharing an apartment with Corey or Princess Coriander, Starfire. And here's Dick and them all hanging out, and here comes Gar and Tara, I should say, to kind of check out Donna's studio and her apartment. And they go through, and it's just an explanation of their jobs and their life right here. And you get an interesting panel here which foreshadows what's going on here. So this looks like a TV screen or a lens, right? George is kind of messing around here, and you get a click, and the colorist goes to black and white shades. And what's going on here as you go through this issue is photographs are being taken, either actual or just in the eyes right here. And it's really, really cool because it's foreshadowing what's going to happen in the next issue. And it's a great build-up. In many ways, I don't know if this is the first time that the sort of pseudo camera panel has ever been used in a comic book, but it is a very effective use of it. In this case, this is 1980, May of 1984. So, you know, this was predates a lot of other comics that use this technique. So we go through and we go to Donna's apartment, and of course they're still talking about the wedding. So Donna's, you know, man toy right here, the older teacher, they're getting married, and so everyone's kind of planning what to do here. And Gar, who's a little bit of a try-hard, suggests to have the wedding at his mansion, and they all agree because this kind of helps them protect their identities. Get a lot of back and forth, and Gar flirting with Tara. They leave the place and they drop off Dick, Robin, so at his apartment. And again, you get 2 clicks right here showcasing, hey, that's where Robin lives. Interesting. So they go over to the park right here, and it's winter in New York City, cold as balls. And over in the park, over at the lake, doing some ice skating practice is Victor, cyborg, and he's hanging out with Sarah, who is this girl who he's been kind of like on and off, you know, somewhat romantically with in this run of the New Teen Titans. And you get a really funny scene of him having a hard time learning how to ice skate, and Gar making fun of him. And they kind of pick up Victor and walk him over to his apartment, where you find out that he's going to have his grandparents visiting him soon, and that it sounds like his relationship with his grandparents is conflicted, much like his relationship with his dad right before he died, right? Then you get a click right there. There's Tara kind of listening in on all of this, right? And at the end, you get a really interesting scene. This is great, you know, visual art by George Perez. You notice how he's had to render so much stuff throughout this issue. And I think Ethan Van Sciver does this a lot too, and that is the use of silhouette panels. And the thing about silhouette panels is they can be extremely effective when you use them in the storytelling. They can also act as like a break for the artist. A lot of artists, especially when you're rendering this much, and if you notice, another thing is, look at how many vertical panels, like thin vertical panels, are everywhere. This is something I've always liked about George Perez, is like he understood the medium that he was working in. So American comic book pages are tall and thin, so logically speaking, if you're trying to jam a lot of panels into an American comic book, the best way to do it is with vertical panels. See how he gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 panels in here, even though one of them, basically this middle section of this page right here is basically wasted for this photography, or I should say camera panel right here. It's something about the medium that I think a lot of artists don't understand. Most artists nowadays, they want to do these kind of panels. They want to do these wide shot panels. And usually what I see a lot in new comic books is basically 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, but all of them are panoramic shots. And in a way, you know, that this kind of copies some of the European comics. They tend to do that a lot too. But European comics tend to be a lot wider than American comics, so it's very easy for them to do that. And also European comics, they will absolutely jam a bunch more panels into the page when they need to. They only really use those panoramic shots when it's required and when it's necessary for establishing shots, or when the story kind of needs it, right? But most American comics nowadays, in the modern era, they do mostly these, which is unfortunate because these panels, while great for making an establishing shot or showing you kind of the whole scenery, they don't do enough storytelling in terms of pushing the plot forward. So anyhow, back to this. Sorry for that side rant. Basically, here's Tara and Gar necking a little bit, as Gar likes to say. And he's having a good time flying off. And Tara heads over to the Titans Tower. I've always thought that the tower design was retarded. I'm sorry. Just a T sticking out of the ground. Always made no sense to me. At least the Baxter Tower and then Avengers Mansion and Xavier's School always made a lot of sense. The T Tower never made a lot of sense. And it was, I don't know if it was Marv or George's idea, but it was always kind of weird looking at it. So we get to the last person on the team, Raven, and she is meditating. And you get an interesting conversation between Tara and Raven, where Tara's kind of like, hey, how come you and I never talk or never have like any conversations or get along at all? And Raven kind of tells her, it's like, you know what? I don't really fully trust you. There's something I sense in you that's not right. And I don't know if it's me or it's you, but until I figure it out, you know, I'm just going to keep my distance. There's something off about you. And of course, you know, Tara's like, oh, you bitch, because Tara is a traitor, and Raven kind of knows it, right? So we move over to the rest of the issue, and it's basically training montage. So you have Victor having a little scene here where he's fighting against this weight machine as he's trying to grow himself. You get another interesting training session between Donna and Starfire, where they're basically dueling each other Amazon style on a sort of, it looks like a mattress, a floating mattress platform. Anyhow, while this is going on, Tara's kind of looking at the whole thing, taking photographic shots of how they fight and how they go at each other. And eventually Donna loses, but, you know, she says, oh, I guess I can only be defeated by people that love me. Kind of cheesy, Marv. But, you know, it's great art by George Perez. Anyhow, they go take a shower, and I like how he manages to make Starfire look very Storm-like in here. And they go outside in the freezing cold to have Tara and Gar train with each other. And this is another great scene because Gar, in typical Beast Boy fashion, turns everything into a joke. So this fight, even though it's supposed to be them training, he ends up teasing the living hell out of Tara. And it starts to finally break her cover. She's starting to get really, really pissed off and really annoyed. And she doesn't actually like Gar at all, as some of you have already surmised. And her cover's starting to break. And Raven is sensing it. Like, all of the ill intention within Tara is showing up. And eventually, she breaks and freaking tosses Gar out and nearly kills him, right? And it takes, you know, Donna, so Wonder Girl, Cyborg, Starfire, and Raven, who jump out and basically stop the fight. And at this point, Raven kind of reveals, like, you know, it's like, there's something wrong with you. I now know there's something wrong with you. And, you know, you intended to hurt Gar. It wasn't an accident. And meanwhile, you get these cut shots right here. See, this is really cool here. I always loved the eyeball shot within these wide panels. And again, this isn't, not many people do this anymore. Again, a lot of what George Perez is doing in this comic book isn't really done in comic book art anymore. Some of it is considered outdated, and some of it is considered not in the service to the ultimate goal of modern comics, which is to make movies, honestly. And so after all that, we go back to Deathstroke, you know, the Terminator, as he was called in the old days here. And he's basically given Tara a lecture while Tara's dressed up all nice and everything. This is foreshadowing something that gets revealed later too, where this run on Judas Contract gets pretty adult for a DC comic in the 80s. Anyhow, and he's kind of giving her a cheer, like, you nearly fucked up the whole thing right here. You know, we're trying to capture these guys off guard, and you nearly blew your cover. And she was kind of like, hey, freaking chill, old man. I'm going to be fine here. By the way, Raven's mine. I'm going to get that bitch. You know, you get some reminiscing to the real cause for this run, which is the death of Deathstroke's son, which occurred very, very early on in the New Teen Titans. I think that was issue like 6 or 8 or whatever it was, that the Teen Titans fought Deathstroke's son, who had used Deathstroke's ability, which allows him to basically unlock his true, you know, human potential. But it ended up killing him. And so he was contracted by Hive to take care of the new Teen Titans. And as a result of his son's death, Deathstroke takes on the contract of his son for Hive to take care of the Teen Titans. And this is what all of this builds up to. And the Judas Contract is the betrayal of the Teen Titans by Tara in order to serve Deathstroke's contract with Hive. And so they get into a helicopter to go execute their plans. Here's some last conversations with Wintergreen right here. And here is two mysterious figures, a woman and a blonde man, who apparently are very familiar with Slade Wilson. And we'll find out about these two in the next issue, Judas Contract #2, Betrayal. Anyhow, that's the video. So normally I do more finished art for my videos. In this series, I think what I decided to do is, since I really admire George Perez's art, I decided to do just more studies. So this is kind of like going back to the old video formats where I used to just draw panels and stuff. In this case, I penciled this up really quick, and these were basically taken from 3 different panels. And the main purpose of this is really to kind of go back in and work on my, my penciling more. So again, here was like the scene of Wonder Girl and Starfire fighting on the thing. And what I do when I do these things, by the way, for those who are curious, and again, not that it matters for the most part, but what I do is I take the panel right here and I don't trace over it. I just, draw what I see on the side right here while I'm looking at the panel. And then essentially what I'm doing is I'm trying to look at the form and sort of this technique and the strategy. That's why you see there's error. For example, like here with Starfire, I screwed this one up pretty bad. Her head is like way too big and she's kind of like oversized in the foreground right here. Like if you're in the foreground, you will be bigger than someone in the background, but not by this much with this perspective. And then the same thing is true. Like this was Tara. She was visiting Victor Stone right here. Again, here I think I made her head too big when I was drawing it. Again, this is also kind of proof that I don't trace. I'm just looking at it and drawing it. And I think I needed to go get her hair a little bit bigger right here. At least I got the buck tooth right. And then this is Deathstroke at the end. But you guys probably already saw that anyway. But anyway, a lot of this is just me studying George Perez. And I think I'm going to take this time when I'm doing this video to kind of look at his art and kind of try to learn something right here. Take my time, enjoy penciling a little bit, not necessarily ink like crazy. Also, I'm out of like Copic ink right now, and I'm waiting for like a new batch of ink to refill some of my Copic markers. So even if I did make more of the finished art that I've shown you previously, I don't have the colors to color it right now. Anyhow, that's the video. Let me know what you think. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you have. Subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. If you got any comments on the Judas Contract Book 1 or I guess my George Perez study, leave it down below, and I will see you next time.